Monopoly by Grit.
Welcome to Monopoly, Season 5, Episode 1. Today we have Frank Days, who is a rooming specialist. It's a very, very interesting topic we're going to talk about today. It's a must-watch for you. Welcome to Monopoly, Frank.
Thanks for having me, Nevin. Pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Before we start, have you played the game Monopoly as a kid?
Of course. I was never any good at it. I'm far too impatient. Far too impatient.
What did you do?
I get to halfway through the game and I chuck it in because building those little tiny houses one at a time, that doesn't work for me. I want mass.
That's right.
In a hurry, right?
That's what
Hence
you're
I'm doing
right
what
now.
I'm doing now. That's right.
That was the brainchild behind this podcast. So we start off with the game of Monopoly always.
Yep.
All right. It's interesting time in the market. And it's an interesting topic we're going to talk about today. Rooming. First of all, let's discuss what is rooming, what are the differences between the standard real estate, standard house and land, or standard house
Sure.
with rooming. Yeah. Your thoughts?
So rooming house is effectively maximising your land
Yep.
to gain the most potential out of that land.
Yeah.
The concept's been around forever.
Yeah.
You know, you can go back as far as you look at anything that's based on Rome or Egypt back in the day. People were living in rooming houses. One of those terms that, though, when you mentioned it, certainly when I started this 7 years ago or so, if you said rooming houses, people would run a mile. That stigma that was attached with that terminology. Fortunately, over the last 7 years, a number of us who are involved in this quite heavily have turned that stigma around. People now understand exactly what the concept is.
Yeah.
They understand it's not creating a drug den or a brothel. It's actually creating affordable housing for those that most need,
Yeah.
which is a win for the tenants. But more importantly for us in this scenario, it's a win for the owners who are the investors in this product. So it's a product that's going to allow you to firstly see significant capital growth from day one because your value of that property is going to be based on the income because it's considered by the banks a commercial asset.
Yeah.
So straight away, as soon as you get those tenants in and they're paying the rent, your valuation goes through the roof.
Yeah.
You're seeing significant cash flow. We're not reliant on one tenant moving in, they move out. It takes you 3-4 weeks to fulfill it. You've always got that coverage because we have anywhere between 5 and 9 different tenants in the property.
Yeah.
When we start this, and we were just having a discussion before we went on air, I've just started filling one of my brand new ones, my personal ones, and what we're seeing at the moment, and this is in Melton, so smaller density population, but we're seeing one a week come in, and that's quite standard for these properties.
Yeah.
The interesting part about it is we expected to see, 300 per room. The property manager that we've enlisted for this property thought he might get 350 a room. We're actually seeing as much as 380 a room coming in, which
Wow.
is significant. So from a portfolio aspect, it certainly adds a cash flow positive spin on your portfolio.
Yeah.
And when we start seeing the government this morning, it's everywhere in the news this morning that they're starting to look at capital gains taxes and negative gearing and anything that's attached with investment property, again, having a positive cash flow property is going to become more important.
Yeah.
And I think the main thing to keep in mind when you're considering a rooming house is it's the best way to utilize that one piece of dirt. And I mean, we don't want to squeeze all the juice out of the lemon, but we're maximizing what we can while still providing a high quality product for the end user.
Correct. And also it's probably similar to the multifamily concept in the US, where you get not 9, but 18, 28. It's in a larger scale, but that didn't exist in Australia. So that's very similar to that. And I think cash flow is what people want, especially in this time of the year.
And I think it's that multifamily model. It's interesting because it's what we've seen internationally forever.
Yeah.
It's a very new concept to Australians and New Zealanders, for
Yeah.
that matter,
Yeah.
where we've all been raised to aspire to that quarter-acre block with a white picket fence.
That's right.
3 children, 2 dogs and a cat sort of thing. And when we look internationally,
Yeah.
we're seeing people. I follow a guy on YouTube who's an American who now lives in Paris, and I do it purely because I'm a bit of a Francophile, right? But this guy is living in an apartment in the middle of Paris, and it's 13 square meters.
Wow.
And there's a lot of people that live in circumstances like that, and it's just normal.
Yeah.
And we are providing rooms, depending on the design, anywhere between 25 to 35 square meters in living space for our tenants.
Yeah.
And I've stayed in one. So when we complete a build, for insurance purposes, someone needs to stay in there until we get our first tenants in.
Yeah.
We couldn't find anyone that wanted to do it, this one particular property, so I did it. And I could easily live in there full term. If I was a single bloke, certainly. And it's interesting, multifamily, I have seen one group out there who have jumped on the bandwagon, and they're actually using multifamily as part of their marketing.
Right. Okay.
So it's getting out there.
All right. Interesting. Thinking about the benefits, we touched upon that before. I think number one benefit is the cash flow. Cash flow is the king. There's no point of keeping cash in your bank. But apart from that, what other benefits can you think of from an investor's point of view?
I think it's the ability to rinse and repeat.
Yeah.
So, yes, your initial outlay on these, particularly if we're talking about the full-size 9-studio versions, the initial outlay can be significant.
Yeah.
I've got some numbers here on one we've done recently. We got away with it relatively cheaply because we got the dirt at a very low price. Our investment in this was just over $300,000.
Yeah.
But if you're paying more market rate numbers for your land, your investment might be required to you put up to $500,000 of your own money to get it rolling.
Yeah.
The benefit about it is, though, once it's complete and we complete the valuations, by the time we refinance this, depending on the LVR we decide to opt for, we may end up being able to pull out all of our cash plus a little bit extra.
Yeah.
Or if we was to sit at, say, 70, that's at 75% LVR. If we were to stick at 70% LVR, we might be in the investment for maybe $40,000.
Yeah.
And on the back of that $40,000 investment, we're pulling $160,000 plus income.
Correct.
Before costs, of course.
Yeah. That's awesome.
That then allows you to take that capital, go do it again.
Exactly. That's refinancing. And how about in terms of land tax? I heard land tax fees waived off for rooming houses. Yeah,
it's one of those things. It's you need to apply for it annually because you need to show that the tenants that you're putting in there fall under a certain threshold when it comes to income.
Yeah.
And also that you're below a certain threshold in what you're charging per room.
Right.
Okay. So off the top of my head, and I haven't looked at it for a while, I think for a single this year, it's like $383 a week per room you can charge maximum for a single. If it's a couple, it's over $500.
Right. Okay.
So there's those. If you stick to certain criterias, and it all has to go through your accountant, they apply for it.
Yeah.
You get your land tax waived, exempt.
And there has to be a threshold of tenants' income as well. They have
to there doesn't. It's one of those things, though, that we don't know. Right. So the tenant doesn't have to supply proof of income when they move into a place, right? So they're going to put in what they earn, what they want to convey, which isn't always a realistic reflection of what they may or may not earn. So I think there's a little bit of give and take in that space, but it's certainly more around how much are you charging them to live there.
Yeah. Very interesting. In terms of the ideal mix of rooming, I know we have 3, 4, 5, up to 9. Can you scale up more, up to
certainly.
15.
Yeah, certainly. The reason we stick to certain numbers, and it goes state by state as well,
Yeah.
and even within different states, it's different numbers potentially under different LGAs. But for example, if we stick to Victoria,
Yeah.
the maximum we can build is up to 300 square metres, 9 studios or 9 rooms, and a maximum of 12 tenants.
Right.
So that's what constitutes the basis of a rooming house or a boarding house or Class 1B building. If you go beyond that, then we're in the realms of we have to go through town planning, get a DA, etc. You can still do it, certainly.
Yeah.
But then one of the beauties of what we do is it's quick, it's easy.
Yeah.
We can get in there and we're out within a year turning that around. If you start going through that whole DA process, well, we know what that can turn out to be.
Yeah.
Particularly when we're having to tell everyone in the neighbourhood what we're wanting to do.
Yeah.
Because whilst we know it's not an issue,
Yeah.
they're going to perceive it as very much an issue.
Yeah. Understood. Multiples of 9 roomers is probably the way to go. It's straightforward, cookie cutter approach.
Yes and no. Okay, so until I ventured into Queensland, so I've been up there for over a year now selling, and they're restricted to 5 rooms.
Yeah.
I've just taken that concept and gone, you know what, it makes sense to be able to offer that here in Victoria.
Yeah.
We're just about to launch a new business, which is going to be focused probably more on that 5-bedroom version. We'll still have the 9-bedroom versions available, but the 9-bedroom versions actually turn out to be more bespoke because we're given blocks of land that someone already owns.
Yeah.
And we don't always have direction over what that might look like. So we will build to fit with that block of land.
Yeah.
With the 5-bedroom versions that we do in Brisbane and what we're about to launch here is it's more of a house and land type concept.
Right.
So yes, we've got the designs already made. You get to choose the colours. That's it.
Yeah.
We're going to package it up with a piece of land that we've secured from a land developer.
Yeah.
And that's what it's going to be. The beauty about that is from an investment perspective, it's going to be much more easy to understand from a finance perspective. We may even get some of these through at resi rates. We yet to test those waters. And it's going to be under $1 million. You know,
Yeah.
I'm hoping to have it well under $1 million. The builds are looking like they'll be around the 500.
Yeah.
Which I think is bloody good values. Previous quotes I've had until partnering up with this particular group, we were talking 600 plus for a 5-bedder.
Yeah.
So it's baseline 610.
Yeah.
So we'll have those to offer. So hopefully one's going to come through during this podcast and I'll be able to offer to you and your clients.
Right.
We'll see if that comes through. They're working their very hardest to package it up this morning.
Yeah.
We'll have that.
Yeah.
We'll have our 9-room bespoke stuff, but we're also going to have opportunities to go into brownfield areas and do a 5-bedder version that's more bespoke as well.
Right.
Each one of those options, very different the way that we approach it, very different way that you can finance it as well.
Right.
So there's options on the table.
Yeah. In terms of financing, a 5-bedder can be standard financing?
Can be, yes.
Can be,
And look, I've had clients in the past come to me and say, look, I want you to build a 9-bedroom house and then come back and retrofit it to try and dodge the finance. And we go, no, we can't do it. That's not what we do.
Yeah.
We build it purpose built as it's meant to be.
Yeah.
You deal with the finance, we'll deal with the building.
Yeah.
But certainly the 5-bedrooms versions on paper, they can look just like a 5-bedroom house.
Exactly.
From all intents and purposes, yeah.
So we talked about Queensland, Victoria. Out of the 2 states, where do you see the potential?
Look, I jumped into Queensland because I saw huge potential there. And there still is, don't get me wrong. But what we have seen is the price of land when we started there was in the fives.
Yeah.
Now it's in the sevens. If you can get something at 650, you're doing well.
Yeah.
But typically it's 7+. We've seen the property prices here in Victoria come back significantly since COVID.
Yeah.
I think the opportunity is probably right here, right now.
Yeah.
And that's probably not just for our product, it's probably for any product. I think there's a moment in time where Victoria is undervalued.
Yeah.
And I would be encouraging my clients to cash in on that.
Yeah.
Because once the ball starts rolling, we've seen what happens in the past.
Yeah.
I think we'll see some significant growth over the next 2 to 3 years here in Victoria.
Yeah.
But look, it comes down to the individual client, where they're comfortable investing.
Yep.
You know, a lot of people are still novices in investing, and we know what small percentage of investors out there actually own 6 or more properties. It's 1%, 2%.
Yeah.
So a lot of investors out there may only have 1, maybe 2 investment properties.
Yeah.
When they're looking at a rooming house, it's a whole new concept that they need to get their head around. So their preference typically is to have something close to where they live.
Correct.
Certainly for the first one.
Yeah.
So if I've got clients who are based in Queensland, they're going to be building something in Brisbane. Yeah. And the reverse here for Victoria. Clients out of Sydney, they tend to be a little bit more. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
They just look at the numbers.
Correct.
A little bit more, astute. But we're looking everywhere. I've got people in WA that can build for us if we have a client who will only go to WA. We're investigating South Australia right now.
Yeah.
I won't go into New South Wales. It's just too hard.
Yeah.
So everything you do there has to go through town planning, which is
Yeah.
not what we want to do.
Yeah. Is the legislation very different in Perth, for example, as opposed to Victoria?
The legislation's different everywhere.
Yeah.
Every state's different. And then even within states, the legislation you're dealing with, to comply with one piece of legislation may mean you're falling outside of another.
Yeah.
There's some very grey areas. I'm actually talking with state ministers right now about some of the anomalies here in Victoria, which I won't get into details here. But, the key is you need to, as an investor, be partnering with someone who's experienced in the space.
Yeah.
A lot of builders out there will tell you, I can build a Class 1. Yes, they can, because on paper, a Class 1B from a building perspective is outlined very thoroughly.
Yeah.
However, that may not fall in line with what the RTA says or what the health department says. So you have to be across all of those issues. Yeah. There's a lot of people out there in the last 2 years who have all of a sudden become co-living or rooming house experts,
right,
on the back of work that others have done, and I've seen them pop up. And one of them was, the one who I mentioned earlier, who's now intergenerational family living.
Yeah.
They arrived out of the blue. I don't think they ever built one until they launched it. Right. So it's important because there's a lot of facts you need to be across.
Yeah.
Before and even within the group of people who know the facts.
Yeah.
Each individual LGA that you're dealing with may read the legislation and interpret it one way compared to another LGA. And then you're dealing with that.
Yeah. Let's take a sample scenario. Something you have done lately. Can you walk us through, let's say land size, number of bedrooms, what sort of return, so forth?
So I'm just about to complete one of my own in Broadmeadows.
Yeah. So
we picked up the land there for $540. It was just over 700. I think it was 707 square meters, something like that. Interesting thing about this was I approached the agent who was marketing it at, I think the marketing said offers over 480 or something like that. And I went, okay, I'll give you 490. Didn't hear anything back. Rang him, he ghosted me. went off the market, I tracked down the owners and I approached them directly and I said, look, I don't know, if you used to want to sell that piece of land? And they said, yeah, absolutely. I said, well, I made some offers. Did you ever receive them? No. Okay. So as it transpired, they would never have taken anything close to the 470 or 480, whatever he marketed it at. We got it for 540. We've put a 9-bedder on there. It should be complete October. So that's, I've just got the numbers here, including holding costs, interest rates, variations that's occurred across the build. We're into it for about 1.45.
Yeah.
300 of that's our own money. The rest is borrowed. The valuation we received based on rents being about $330 a week, pre-build was 1.8. We now know that the actual rents are going to be closer to 370. My expectation, that's going to be valued out at about 1.94.
Right.
Okay. So based on that, we'll be able to borrow at 75% LVR, pull out all of our money,
Yep.
and then collect the rent. I think the rent, EBITDA rent, is going to be in circa 85,000.
Right. That's awesome.
Actually higher than that.
About so it's a 9-bedder.
160. Sorry, it's going to be about 115
Right.
EBITDA. So yeah, that's a 9-bedder.
Yeah.
And the beautiful thing about these also is because the valuation of that property is tied to the income.
Correct.
Every time you put up the rooms $10 a week,
Yeah.
the value of that property goes up about 50 grand.
Yeah.
And that's just compounding over the course of time.
Correct.
All right. So that's for a full 9-bedroom
Yeah.
setup, which if you can afford to do, that's what we do. If you
Yeah.
can't afford to go that side, that's when we start looking at the smaller versions.
Yeah.
And look, the numbers from a yield perspective
Yeah.
work out just as well for a smaller version than a big.
Yeah.
Because typically you're able to secure the land much cheaper than you're going to get for a 9-studio version.
Sure. And was that a bare land or was it?
Yes, we were fortunate that had been cleared. They had plans for 3 townhouses,
Yeah.
approved plans. And it's always interests me when I see on the different forums I'm in, people wanting to sell blocks of land with all these approved plans. And to most of us out there,
Yeah.
the plans are worthless.
Yeah.
But what did save us money was the fact that they'd already cleared the site.
Yeah.
So that saved us $25,000.
Yeah.
I brought another site down the road from here a couple of weeks ago, which I'd analysed for a client. They couldn't move forward with it, so I jumped on it. We got the land for $470.
Yeah. Where was that?
Also Broadmeadows.
Yeah.
Also vacant site. However, it is on a slope, so what we're saving in some respects we're losing in site works. But after all the site works are completed, I think it'll be 520.
Yeah.
So it's still coming in similar. It'll come in at similar numbers as this. Probably a little bit better.
Yeah. Why did you pick Broadmeadows? Is it closeness to the city?
We just look where we think's going to work.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. A lot of people ask me, "What about regional, rural?" I've got nothing against regional, rural. Me personally, I tend to stick close to the Melbourne CBD as I can.
Yeah.
The main thing you're looking for, it's not like a traditional investment property where you need to worry about things like schools. Okay.
Yeah.
The other things, yes. Hospitals, great. Universities, maybe. Shopping centres, yes. Train stations, yes. You're looking for that sort of mix. These Broadmeadow ones, they're right next to the major shopping centre. There's a hospital just down the road. There's a train station within a kilometre.
Yeah.
Ticks all those boxes.
Yeah.
Probably the only area I wouldn't be building right now within Victoria is Frankston, simply because a company that I actually started doing this with as a BDM way back when, based in Frankston. They've built a lot there from day one. And I think there's a little bit of an oversupply in that particular location, but most other places you're going to feel easy. Having said that, one of my clients has built in Frankston, and they're doing very well out of it. But, for me, I'd be looking somewhere else.
Yeah.
And look, Broadmeadows, it's going through a gentrification at the moment.
Yeah.
There's a lot of development happening in and around the areas. A lot of the old state homes are being sold off and knocked down, and townhouses are being built.
Yeah.
I see a lot of upside there.
That's great. What are the risks involved in doing this from an investor's point of view?
Probably the biggest risk is partnering with the wrong people to do it for you.
Yeah.
That would be the biggest risk. I think the biggest issue has always been finance.
Yeah.
Right. So, and this is why we've sort of transitioned from only doing 9 studios into now, okay, well, let's start at 5.
Yeah.
We can create models that we can do 6 and 7 down the track as well.
Yeah.
But finance has always been the issue. Slowly over time, we've educated the valuers, we've educated the lenders. Yeah. We now have a broader opportunity in that space. So we've created an ecosystem where a client can come along. If they want to do a 9 better, we just plug them into our ecosystem. It all gets done for them. Everyone who's in that system knows what they're doing, knows how to generate that outcome. Yeah. And it's simple. It's just the only question is, all right, how much is the land? How much do you need to input at the start? Yeah. Making sure that the location's right so that when you come to pull your money out, you're going to be able to bring it 100 or 90% or 120%, whatever it might be. I've had projects of my own. I mean, COVID had a lot of downs. Yeah. One of the ups was I scored some really cheap land, which we've been able to develop on, and then the end valuation, we pulled out enough to do, not just get our money back, but have the deposit for another one. Yeah. So it's all about plugging into that ecosystem.
Correct. And the beauty about what you do is you have skin on the game, and not many people do that. Either people talk about it, promote it, but once you're in the game, that makes a whole lot of difference. At the same time, it gives confidence.
It gives you street cred is what it gives you. And look, and I was new to this 7 years. And when it was introduced to me, I said no. Yep. And luckily someone persevered with me. No, don't just say no because you've heard those words. Come and have a look, see what we're building, look at the numbers. Yeah. So I went and did that, and I went, shit, this is it, right? So I went through that whole learning process, and what I found was back in the day, that learning process was we had to remove that stigma of what a rooming house was. Once we got through that with a client, we'd then show them the numbers, and then they would run because we've all been taught if it looks too good to be true, it is. There's something wrong with it, right? Yep. So you get them over that hurdle. So the whole process might have been an 18-month process to get someone comfortable with actually doing something. And then, of course, being self-employed, it took me a while to be in a position where I could do my own. Yeah. And then when I was, COVID hit. Yeah. All of a sudden, I didn't have any clients. I didn't have that income, so I had to hold. But I started my journey building my own in 2021. Right. I've got 3 complete, 1 ready for handover in October, and we've just brought the land for another one, which will be completed, and let's call it December next year. Yeah,
that's awesome.
And you can't, and you know, I've said this in different forums. You know, ask the person who's trying to sell you it. Yeah. How many do they have? Yeah. And I'll get whacked from it from people who are selling it and don't have any themselves. I'll get whacked in the comments, but you know, it's a fair question to ask.
It's a fair question. Definitely a fair question.
I mean, what would you buy Buy a Rolls Royce from a dude that's driving a Maserati.
That's right.
You know, it's
There you go. Rooming is the way to go. You need to talk to us about the numbers, about the feasibility of such projects. Thanks for watching. See you on the next episode.